Corporal Klinger on MASH wasn't just a sidekick in a dress. He became one of the most daring and unforgettable characters in television history. The role turned Jamie Farr into a star and broke barriers on primetime TV in ways no one expected. But while audiences laughed at Klinger's wild schemes, Farr's real life was nothing like the character he played. Away from the spotlight, he carried private struggles, family heartbreaks, and health battles that fans never saw. And now, we finally know the truth about Jamie Farr's personal life that has stayed hidden for years. The rise of Jamie Farr. Jamie Farr's performance in MASH turned Klinger into one of television's most beloved characters, and it gave him a kind of immortality in American pop culture. But while millions laughed at his antics, few people knew the difficult path he had taken to get there, and even fewer knew about the challenges and heartbreaks that awaited him after the show ended. Jamie Farr was born Jamil Joseph Farah on July 1, 1934, in Toledo, Ohio. His parents were Lebanese-American immigrants who raised their children in a tight-knit working-class neighborhood. Life at home was simple, but it was far from easy. Like many immigrant families of the time, the Farahs worked tirelessly to make ends meet, and every member of the household was expected to contribute. As a boy, Jamie did his part by delivering newspapers and helping out in his father's shop. These early jobs taught him responsibility and gave him a strong work ethic that stayed with him throughout his life. Jamie's first taste of performing came in an unexpected way. At age 11, he entered a local acting contest, and although he didn't win first prize, he walked away with a $2 award. That small victory was enough to spark something inside him, and soon he discovered his love for the stage and the attention that came with it. That early experience planted a seed that would grow into a lifelong passion for acting. In high school, Jamie nurtured that passion by performing in school plays and community productions. After graduating, he set his sights on California and enrolled at the Pasadena Playhouse, a respected drama school that had trained many actors who went on to successful careers. His talent didn't go unnoticed. During his time at the Playhouse, Jamie caught the attention of a talent scout, and that single discovery led to his first major opportunity: a small part in the groundbreaking 1955 film Blackboard Jungle. He played a character named Santini, a student in a tough inner-city high school. Although it was a minor role, the experience was invaluable. It marked his entry into Hollywood and gave him a glimpse of the possibilities ahead. But Hollywood is rarely a straight path, and for Jamie, the road was about to take an unexpected turn. In 1957, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. However, rather than seeing it as an interruption, he embraced his duty. He served as a broadcast specialist in Korea and Japan, producing radio shows and entertainment for the troops. His time in the service would later give him something unique among the MASH cast, and that was first-hand knowledge of military life during the Korean War. Aside from Alan Alda, he was the only member of the cast who had actually served in that conflict. This experience brought authenticity to his future role on the show, and made him more than an actor pretending to understand the struggles of soldiers. After returning from the Army, Jamie's career didn't take off immediately. He faced the harsh realities of life as a struggling actor. There were long stretches without work, and to pay the bills, he took whatever jobs he could find. At some point, he worked on a chinchilla farm, delivered packages, and even held a position as an airline clerk. Acting opportunities came here and there, but they were small roles that weren't enough to build a stable career. Things became even harder after the death of his father. The loss shook Jamie deeply. He thought seriously about giving up on acting altogether, believing that maybe the dream he had chased since childhood wasn't meant to be. He considered going back to Ohio to take a steady job and support his family, but fate stepped in at the right moment. Red Skelton, the legendary comedian and television star, became a turning point in Jamie's life. Skelton saw something in the young actor and decided to help him. Not only did he give Jamie money when he desperately needed it, but he also hired him as a writer for The Red Skelton Show. That support kept Jamie afloat during his darkest days and allowed him to keep his dream alive. From there, Jamie slowly started building a steady career. He appeared in minor film and television roles, gaining experience and visibility. Each role, no matter how small, became another step forward. He might not have been a household name yet, but he was laying the groundwork for the opportunity that would eventually define his career. And that opportunity was about to arrive. When MASH came along in the early 1970s, Jamie Farr was not the producer's first choice, nor did he expect the role to last beyond a handful of episodes. But what began as a short-term character soon exploded into one of the most iconic roles in television history: Jamie's entry into MASH. When MASH debuted in 1972, few could have predicted that it would become one of the most influential television shows of all time. The series was based on Richard Hooker's 1968 novel and the Oscar-winning 1970 film of the same name, but the TV adaptation found its own voice. The show struck an unusual balance of sharp comedy on the surface, with serious undertones that dealt with the brutality and absurdity of war. This mix of humor and gravity set it apart from the standard sitcoms of the day. Jamie Farr's entry into this world happened almost by accident. In the first season, the producers wanted a one-off gag for episode 4. They needed an actor who could pull off something outrageous but believable. A soldier so desperate to get discharged that he dressed in women's clothing to prove he was mentally unfit for service. It was a wild comedic idea, meant to last a single scene, and they hired Jamie Farr to play Corporal Klinger. No one involved imagined it would go further than that. Farr himself thought it was just another small job in a career made up of small jobs. But when the episode aired, something clicked. Audiences responded to the character in ways the writers hadn't anticipated. Farr's performance was funny, but it wasn't mocking. He gave Klinger an endearing quality, a sense of humanity beneath the gag. Viewers laughed, but they also cared about him. Because of that reaction, the producers decided to bring him back. At first, his appearances were sporadic, sprinkled through the first few seasons whenever a script called for comic relief. But with each return, Klinger grew more distinctive. He wasn't simply a soldier in a dress, he was a fully fleshed-out character with quirks, frustrations, and loyalty to his fellow doctors and nurses. By season 4, Jamie Farr had been promoted to a full-time cast member. That decision changed his life. Suddenly, after years of small roles and day jobs, he had steady work on one of the most-watched television series in America. More than that, he had a role that gave him freedom to explore both comedy and drama. At first, Klinger's cross-dressing was a constant punchline. But as the seasons went on, the writers leaned on Farr's ability to add depth. They gave Klinger storylines that dealt with duty, loyalty, and even mental health, topics not often tackled in sitcoms at the time. In total, Jamie Farr appeared in over 200 episodes of MASH, becoming as recognizable to viewers as the main characters. When the original series ended in 1983, Farr was one of the cast members chosen to continue in the spin-off after MASH. Though it only lasted 2 seasons, it showed how much faith the producers had in Klinger's popularity. The role did more than make Jamie Farr a household name. In a subtle way, it also helped open doors for conversations that were far ahead of their time. Klinger's cross-dressing, while played for comedy, also reflected the lengths soldiers might go to escape the trauma of war. His behavior hinted at the psychological strain of combat, and it gave viewers a way to think about issues like gender expression and mental health in a military setting. In the 1970s, those subjects were rarely touched on in mainstream television, but the show and Jamie Farr made them part of the cultural conversation. Another reason Klinger became so beloved was because Jamie Farr infused him with his own roots. He referenced his hometown of Toledo, Ohio, in countless episodes, turning it into part of Klinger's identity. Mentions of his hometown became running jokes, and they also gave the character a grounding in real American life. For viewers in Toledo, it was a point of pride, and for everyone else, It was another reminder that Klinger was more than a caricature. He was a soldier who came from somewhere real. Recognition soon followed. In 1985, Jamie Farr was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, cementing his place in entertainment history. It was an achievement far beyond what the struggling boy from Toledo, who once thought of quitting acting altogether, could have imagined. Despite the achievements behind the scenes, the world of MASH was not without tension. As the series grew in popularity and the characters evolved, creative disagreements and personal struggles sometimes threatened to pull at the fabric of the show. Did the cast members get along? For Jamie Farr, stepping onto the set of MASH felt like walking into a dream. After years of struggling for small parts and odd jobs, he found himself part of a cast that he later described as the perfect dream team. It wasn't only the writing or the success of the show that made it special, it was the chemistry of the people who worked together every day to create something groundbreaking. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye Pierce, was at the heart of it all. Farr often said Alda was the spine of the series. He wasn't only the star, he was also a guiding force behind the scenes. Generous, thoughtful, and collaborative, Alda made sure everyone's voice was heard. His influence extended beyond acting. He directed more episodes than anyone else, and his ideas often pushed the show into deeper and more meaningful territory. Farr admired him for his leadership and his ability to balance comedy with the serious themes that defined MASH. Farr's respect extended to his other co-stars as well. Loretta Swit, who played Major Margaret Houlihan, impressed him with her dedication. Gary Berghoff, who played Radar O'Reilly, brought a mix of innocence and heart to the screen that matched his real-life personality, while Harry Morgan, who joined the show later as Colonel Sherman Potter, became like a father figure on set. Working with actors of this caliber was not only rewarding, but also humbling. Of course, a long-running show is never without disagreements. The writers and cast sometimes clashed over storylines and the tone of certain episodes. One of the more memorable debates involved Alan Alda and Mike Farrell. The two reportedly had a heated discussion about a script that revolved around ethical dilemmas faced by the characters. Both men cared deeply about the direction of the show, and they wanted the themes to be handled with care. The argument wasn't about egos, it was about making sure the material lived up to the standards they had set for themselves and their audience. But not all departures from the show were so smooth. Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John in the early seasons, left after ongoing creative differences with the producers. He reportedly felt that his character was being overshadowed and underdeveloped compared to Hawkeye. Although his exit was disappointing to many fans, there wasn't any lasting bitterness between Rogers and Alda. In fact, the two remained friends for years, proving that professional disagreements didn't have to ruin personal relationships. Another moment of behind-the-scenes tension came when William Christopher, who played Father Mulcahy, was diagnosed with hepatitis. In television, health concerns often lead to tough decisions, and there was serious talk of writing his character off the show. But Alda intervened. He personally wrote an episode that worked around Christopher's condition, ensuring that he stayed part of the cast. It was an act of loyalty and compassion that reflected the sense of family the actors had built together. That sense of family also expressed itself in lighter ways. The set of MASH was often filled with laughter and practical jokes. The cast would play elaborate pranks on one another, breaking up the tension of working long hours on such emotionally heavy material. Mike Farrell, for instance, once sent Alan Alda a singing telegram as part of a long-running joke. These pranks became a tradition, a way of reminding themselves that even in the middle of telling stories about war and loss, there was room for joy and camaraderie. To Jamie Farr, these moments behind the camera were as important as what happened in front of it. He often said that the bond between the characters, which the viewers saw on screen, was real. The affection, the arguments, and the laughter all came from a genuine connection that the cast shared. While there were occasional frictions, they were the kind that happen in any family. And like a family, the bonds between the cast endured even after the cameras stopped rolling. When MASH came to an end in 1983, it left behind a legacy that no other television show has quite matched. The final episode, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, became the most watched broadcast in American television history at the time, with more than 100 million viewers. It was a cultural moment, but it was also a deeply personal one for the people who had spent more than a decade working side by side. For Farr, saying goodbye to Klinger and to the show was bittersweet. He had gone from being a day player brought in for a gag to a central figure in one of television's greatest achievements. After the show ended, Jamie Farr decided to move beyond the character that had defined him and carve out a new chapter for himself after living so long in the shadow of one unforgettable role. However, what happened to him afterwards was filled with twists, struggles, and surprising turns that most people never saw coming. Jamie's life after MASH. When MASH ended in 1983, Jamie Farr faced a dilemma that has haunted many actors who become closely identified with a single role. He had spent more than a decade bringing Corporal Klinger to life, and audiences loved him for it. But that love came with a challenge. Typecasting. Casting directors often struggled to see beyond the dresses, the antics, and the charm that had made him famous. Roles outside of comedy or eccentric characters were scarce. Still, Farr was determined not to let his career fade. He worked hard to reinvent himself, finding opportunities in film, television, and theater. In the years after MASH, Farr appeared in several movies that gave him new visibility. He joined the cast of the Cannonball Run trilogy, appearing alongside big names like Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, and Jackie Chan. The films were filled with slapstick humor and outrageous stunts, and although they weren't critically acclaimed, they were box office successes. Farr's presence in them helped prove he could be part of larger ensemble projects outside of his iconic TV role. He also landed a part in the 1988 holiday film Scrooged, starring Bill Murray. Though his appearance was brief, it placed him in a modern retelling of a classic story that remains a holiday staple. Beyond that, he guest-starred on numerous television programs, ranging from lighthearted shows like The Love Boat to more contemporary comedies like That 70s Show. Each appearance kept him in front of audiences and reminded people that he was more than a one-role actor. Yet it was on the stage where Farr found some of his greatest fulfillment after MASH. Theater allowed him to stretch his talents in ways television sometimes limited. He performed in multiple productions and even toured with his MASH co-star William Christopher at some point. The chemistry they had built on screen carried into their stage work, and audiences responded warmly. These live performances were a return to Farr's roots of acting and connecting directly with people, night after night, without the filter of a camera. But as Farr continued to work, his life after MASH was also shaped by personal struggles. Health became a recurring challenge. By the early 1990s, he had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, a painful and often debilitating condition that affects the joints. It was something he battled quietly, managing the illness while still pursuing the demanding schedule of an entertainer. Then, in 2014, his health troubles made headlines. During a dinner theater performance in Edmonton, Canada, Farr suddenly collapsed on stage. The audience was stunned, and for a moment, it seemed as though tragedy had struck. Fortunately, he eventually recovered, but doctors later determined he needed a stent placed in his heart. The incident was a sobering reminder of his vulnerability, even for fans who still thought of him as the lively, irrepressible Klinger. Loss also touched his personal life. In 2012, Farr's beloved sister Yvonne passed away. She had been a constant presence in his life, part of the close-knit family that had supported him from his earliest days in Toledo. Her death was a blow that left him grieving, even as he continued to work and stay in the public eye. Despite these challenges, Jamie Farr remained resilient. He never stopped working, and he never stopped finding ways to connect with his fans. Whether on stage, in guest appearances, or through public appearances at events, he carried the legacy of MASH with pride, but also showed that he was more than the sum of one famous character. But while his career kept him in the spotlight, the most enduring chapter of his life unfolded off-screen, in his love life and long-standing relationships that gave him the strength to face both success and hardship. A love life that endured. In 1963, Jamie Farr married the woman who would remain by his side for more than 60 years, Joy Ann Richards. Their marriage became one of the most enduring love stories in Hollywood, a place where long-lasting unions are rare. Through the highs of fame and the lows of uncertainty, Joy stood as Farr's constant source of strength. Long before Jamie became known to the world as Corporal Klinger, Joy was supporting him through the lean years of auditions, rejections, and financial struggle. She stood by him when he had to take odd jobs to survive, and when the future of his career was unclear. During his military service in Korea and Japan, Joy was also his anchor at home, writing letters and waiting patiently for his safe return. That loyalty created a foundation that held strong throughout the decades that followed. Their bond was not limited to private life. From time to time, they worked together creatively. In 2003, they co-wrote a children's book titled Hababi's Christmas Eve. The book drew inspiration from Farr's Lebanese heritage and told the story of a Middle Eastern shepherd boy who meets the Christ child on Christmas Eve. It reflected the couple's shared values, their appreciation for storytelling, and their desire to pass on traditions and faith to younger generations. Family life was always central to Farr's identity. He and Joy raised 2 children, Jonas and Yvonne, and he often spoke of them as his pride and joy, and the true treasures of his life. Later, when he became a grandfather, his role expanded once again. His grandson Dorian brought new joy into his world, and he often mentioned how proud he was to watch his family grow into the next generation. Throughout his career, Farr never hesitated to give credit where it was due. Whenever he reflected on his successes, he pointed to Joy and his children as the reason he had been able to keep going. Hollywood can be a difficult place, with constant pressures, long working hours, and the uncertainty of show business. However, Farr confessed that his emotional stability came from home, having a wife who believed in him when few others did, and children who gave him perspective on what truly mattered, allowed him to face the challenges of acting without losing sight of his values. While the public often saw Jamie Farr as a comic figure in dresses on MASH, those closest to him knew that he was a devoted husband and father. Joy's quiet but steady presence at his side was a reminder that behind the scenes, he lived a grounded life. Their marriage endured decades of change in the entertainment industry and became an example of commitment that fans admired. Jamie Farr's love life and family paint a picture of stability, faith, and devotion. But it turns out there are some little-known details and surprising facts about him that even longtime fans may not know. Those details reveal a lighter, more unexpected side to the man behind Klinger. Surprising facts about Jamie Farr. Even with a career as public as Jamie Farr's, there are many details about his life that remain surprising to fans. Beyond MASH and the role of Corporal Klinger, he lived a career filled with unique moments, unexpected choices, and achievements that highlighted both his creativity and his character. Do you know that one of the most personal decisions Farr made during MASH involved his children? For years, Klinger's outlandish outfits had been a defining feature of the character. But as Farr's own kids grew older, he worried about how those costumes might affect them at school. He didn't want them teased or singled out because of their father's role. And so, out of love and concern for them, he gradually stopped wearing women's clothes on the show in later seasons. This change didn't lessen Klinger's impact. Instead, it allowed the character to develop in new directions while protecting Farr's family from unwanted attention. Another little-known fact involves the dog tags Klinger wore throughout the series. Unlike many props used on set, Farr's tags were not replicas. They were his real military-issued dog tags from his time serving in the U.S. Army during the Korean War. This detail gave his performance an authenticity that no script could create. Viewers might not have realized it, but the tags symbolized a genuine and emotional connection between Farr's life and the role that defined him. Many fans never realized just how versatile Farr was, mostly because he suffered from major typecasting problems. But his versatility as an actor also showed up on stage. When Broadway star Nathan Lane had to step away from a production, Farr was called in as a replacement. He had only 2 weeks' notice to prepare for the role, but he rose to the challenge. That quick turnaround highlighted not only his professionalism, but also his ability to adapt quickly, traits that had carried him through his early struggles in Hollywood and his years on MASH. Farr also ventured into broadcasting in a different way when he hosted a daily radio segment called Travelin' Farr. It allowed him to connect with audiences beyond television and film, sharing stories and travel tips in a friendly, conversational style. The program showed his ability to engage with fans in yet another medium, proving his talents were not limited to acting alone. On the big screen, Farr holds a unique distinction. He is the only actor to appear in all 3 Cannonball Run films. While other stars came and went across the trilogy, Farr's presence remained constant, adding continuity to the franchise. This gave him a place in a series that, while lighthearted and chaotic, remains a nostalgic favorite for many moviegoers of the 1980s. Advertising also played a role in his career. Farr appeared in commercials for brands like Wonder Bread and Mars Bars. These appearances may not have been as glamorous as Hollywood films, but they kept him in the public eye and reflected the trust companies had in his approachable image. To millions of viewers, Farr was recognizable and likable, qualities that made him an effective spokesman. Outside of entertainment, Farr also showed a sense of civic responsibility. He contributed financially to political campaigns, often supporting Lebanese-American candidates who represented his heritage. It was his way of honoring his background and giving back to the community that shaped him. His hometown of Toledo never forgot him either. The city renamed a park in his honor, officially designating it as Jamie Farr Park. It was a gesture of gratitude from the place that had nurtured his earliest dreams, and it allowed his name to become a permanent part of the city's landscape. Perhaps his most lasting contribution outside of entertainment came through sports and charity. Farr hosted the Jamie Farr Toledo Classic, a professional golf tournament, for 28 years. Under his leadership, the event raised millions of dollars for children's charities in Ohio and beyond. The tournament became a community tradition, drawing fans, celebrities, and golfers from around the world. Farr made it clear just how deeply passionate he was about creating opportunities to give back and using his platform for something greater than personal fame. Jamie Farr was more than an actor who played an unforgettable character. He was a father who put his children first, a performer who seized opportunities on stage and screen, a community figure who used his influence for good, and a man whose legacy extended well beyond Hollywood. And behind the laughter of MASH and the image of Klinger, Jamie Farr built a life filled with resilience, generosity, and surprising achievements that still resonate today. Who was your favorite character on MASH? Tell us in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.